Like, how do you get the
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dan, and on behalf of Book Soup, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us for our virtual event with Kathleen Hanna in conversation with the Go-Go's bassist, Kathy Valentine, who is here to present All I Ever Wanted, a rock and roll memoir. We are so excited and grateful that our bookstore can continue to bring authors and their works to our community during this uncertain time. We are hosting more virtual events in the near future, and you can learn more about them on our website, as well as our social media. Our next event is scheduled for Thursday, May 14th at 6 p.m. with Celia Starr discussing Frida in America, the creative awakening of a great artist. And the artist, of course, is Frida Kahlo. For regular updates on upcoming events, please feel free to subscribe to our email newsletter. This evening's virtual event will end with a Q&A. To submit a question, please use the Ask a Question button at the bottom of the screen. If you see a question on that list that you'd like for our speakers to answer, please click the like button. We will try to answer as many questions as time will allow. Also, please consider supporting our bookstore and Kathy Valentine by purchasing a copy of tonight's featured book. Just click the green purchase button directly below the viewer screen. The link will redirect to our website where you can continue your checkout process. We are selling digital audiobooks and ebooks for those who are interested as well. With that said, let me introduce our speakers for this evening. Kathy Valentine is a working musician and songwriter known for being part of the all-female band, The Go-Go's. She wrote or co-wrote many of the band's most renowned songs, including Vacation and Head Over Heels. For applause if we were live, if we were in person. In addition to playing music and writing songs, Valentine has worked as an actor, public speaker, and spokesperson and producer. In 2017, she created She Factory, an event series to raise money for women-centered nonprofits. She currently lives in her hometown of Austin with her daughter, where she plays both solo and with her band, the Bluebonnets, and is completing her first college degree. Tonight, she is in conversation with Kathleen Hanna, a New York City-based artist best known for her groundbreaking performances as a member of the 90s punk band Bikini Kill and her multimedia group La Tigra. The Punk Singer, a documentary about her life, premiered at festivals and saw a nationwide theatrical release. She's currently giving lectures and performing with her new band, The Julie Ruin. And without further ado, I'm going to turn the cameras over to Kathy Valentine and Kathleen Hanna. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the presentation.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
Yep.
Hey, Kathleen.
Hi, Kathy. How's it going in Austin?
It's going pretty good, except I was just holding my dog up by my face, and now I've got fur all over my face, and I'm going to be like, ugh. Anyway, I like your shirt.
I'm wearing my Go-Go's vacation shirt. I don't think a lot of people know. Well, if you haven't read the book yet, Kathy wrote the lyrics. I feel like, were you literally on a plane when you wrote the lyrics?
I was. I had come to Austin and I'd had a fling, and it was kind of the first time in my whole life that I felt like a boy liked me. And even though we weren't boyfriend, girlfriend, it was just felt nice to be really liked and by somebody so cute too. And so on the plane, I just had this nice glow. And I mean, I would have been pretty much drunk or hungover or asleep or messed up or whatever the whole time, but it wasn't too much to dilute what was kind of just a really nice infatuation. And so I wrote it on airplane napkins. And as soon as I got off the plane, I knew how I wanted the music to go. So yeah, wrote it on an airplane. Never would have guessed that I'd, 45 years.
Right, the summer anthem, one of the best summer anthems of all time. And the best, I'm missing you and I'm holding my face in a weird way, imagining you're looking at me kind of song. It's so good. Vacation's one of my all-time faves. That's actually the first time I saw you. I was on that tour, on the Vacation tour.
Oh, really? I was going to ask you that, but I think one thing that makes it resonate is that it was so heartfelt. It's not like it's some literary work or of genius, but it's so authentic. It's so for real. And I think people can tell when something's authentic and real and coming from the heart. So that's how I explain it. Plus, pretty catchy too.
Yeah, but I don't think a lot of people understand that you were all songwriters to some extent in the band and what you did. That there was a lot of there was more moving around than I thought, and I think a lot of people assume Belinda wrote all the lyrics. Like if you're not a deep dive fan, so it was just really fascinating to read about all the different kind of how you got into your instrument, why you got into your instrument. I mean, you were only like 14 or something when you decided you were going to play, or 15. How old were you?
Yeah, I was 15 when I was 14 when I saw Suzi Quatro, and I had been playing guitar, but to me it was either you were Grace Slick, Janis Joplin, like a front person type rock star, or you were like a folk singer. Like that, to me, it didn't occur to me that you could be a rock star and be a woman. Weren't any around. As it turns out, there were lots of girls and women doing music starting from the 60s, but we didn't have YouTube, we didn't have the internet, so I had no way of, and because they weren't successful or have hits, they didn't filter down to my world. So I was 14 when I saw Suzi Quatro, and my head exploded. And I knew from that minute on that was what I wanted to do, and I really wanted to do it with other girls. I wanted to find girls my age that wanted to be in a band too, and that was kind of my driving force for the next. Kind of sometimes still is in a weird way. I get really excited if I meet. I don't know, when it's somebody like-minded, I just get super excited.
Did you in the Go-Go's at any time, like you touched on like definitely like sexist stuff happening and being like, you know, what I mean, I can't believe major labels weren't lining up to sign you. And, you know, you ended up going with an indie that's IRS, which is a very famous indie and had a famous name attached, but was still an indie. Did you all ever talk about the fact that you were girls and that was affecting the way you were being treated? You were treating.
Well, we were told flat out. So, I mean, that was what our manager got told, that, you know, oh yeah, we can see that they're popular in LA. We can see that they can sell out the Whisky or the Starwood, but there's never been an all-female band that's successful. So we're going to pass. I mean, Ginger probably has the letters. She probably has the letters still. So yeah, it definitely came up because there was no like sneaky stuff. It was really blatant, like why we weren't getting a record deal. But you know, once we had one, once Miles Copeland wanted to do it, it was like we didn't think a lot about, you know, it seemed really stupid to us when we would get the question all the time, like, what's it like to be a girl in an all-girl band? And we would just be silly. We'd say things like, well, we don't know. We've never been guys. We don't, you know, we'd always take it really kind of lighthearted, like we don't know what it's like because we can't compare it to something else. But you know, I think it was not like it was on our mind all the time, but of course things would come up where you would go, oh, for God's sake, you know, especially with the resistance with radio programmers, you know, just kind of obstacles, you know, people.
Right.
But at the same time, and I know you went through this too, at the same time, people want to look at you. They want to be around you. They want you to come to their station, and they want you to do their station IDs and sit, you know, drag yourself out of bed at 6 a.m. and be there, and you know, yucking it up with the morning jocks. They want you to do all that, but then they don't want to add the record. So it was like nobody didn't want to be around us. It was like we were a little bit of a circus act. Kind of, you know, they all wanted to be around and see what we were like, and we usually scared the hell out of everybody, you know.
Yeah, I'm sure it was really intimidating. The sheer like pop writing force of the five of you, to me, absolutely blows me away. We were talking about Suzi Quatro a minute ago, and like a lot of women that I know who are just slightly, because you're actually not that much older than me, and neither is Joan Jett. And she also has Susie Quattro as like, that was my aha moment, like my big aha moment. And I just think it's really amazing that there's so many women that have been the aha moment for other women who maybe haven't achieved the same like international success. Although Susie Quattro does have international success, and I don't even know, because in my world, she's wildly famous.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like sometimes I feel really confused because like in my world, Susie Quattro is huge, but then I feel like in the mainstream, maybe people in their like 40s and 50s know her as like Leather Tuscadero or something like that, which is like so depressing. I mean, although good job on her manager for getting her that huge attention. So hopefully people bought her records.
Yeah, it was a gig. She has a documentary coming out. In fact, in a couple of days, I'm going to be doing a Zoom with her to promote her documentary, which comes out in July.
Wow.
And I think a lot of people are going to wise up. And the cool thing is there's a part in my book where I write about, I'm like forcing my friends to be in my band and play instruments. And I go to England and I guess I'm 17 and I answer an ad in a Melody Maker and I meet up with these girls and they take me around their neighborhood and there's like tons of musicians and really good ones. And that's because they had Susie Quattro. In America, we didn't have that. So all these girls in England, I mean, really good musicians. And I was like, oh my God, my head was swimming. And that was the band that went on to be Girls' School. But I think all the time about what a different world and what a different rock and roll culture we would have if more girls in the 70s, which was really a hallmark time, 60s too, 60s and 70s was when culture was being shaped by rock and roll to a large degree, and women are largely absent from it. And I think if we'd had those rock stars that were women, that even if they weren't successful, just seeing them, I think there would have been a lot more bands in the musical landscape that were female driven. Thank God for punk rock, that kind of.
And you came out of the punk rock scene and like, you all were Belinda played drums in the Germs, and like the LA scene is such a huge part of the musical legacy in the United States, like the LA punk scene. And then you all went on and your songs started getting popular, and you basically became like huge successes. Like, how did you feel like shunned by the scene, or like would you go back to a club and just be like, oh, are they going to treat me weird because I'm on MTV now, or was it just like cool?
Well, I think it would have had more effect on the others, and from what I've heard, it did. And I think there was a little bit of grumbling, but for me personally, I mean, like the hardcore scene was never my scene, and I think it's interesting. Like you guys in your era in the 90s, like the punk scene was more closed off to women, and I'm like, what the heck happened from our punk rock scene to what happened later? And I think about all the bands that, I mean, there was so much lightheartedness in the punk scene at first, and there was, we had the Damned and the Ramones. They're almost like cartoon characters, and it still had the energy, but not as much of the anger and stuff. And like punk rock leveled the field for me. It was like, oh, I don't have to play like Jeff Beck or Jimmy Page to start a band. I can do it now. But in terms of like actually being a punk rocker, I had a short haircut, but I was into bands and songs, and the Sex Pistols had great songs. I liked them, and in the LA scene, we had the Weirdos, and we had X, great musicians, and we had the Dickies, who were just so fun and goofy. There was just this lightness that I felt like as the punk scene went on, it got less so, and it got more about like kind of hardcore, and that became the driving punk scene, the Orange County bands and stuff. And that's not what the Go-Go's were about. So we were okay with kind of going on our way with our good songs. See you later. But I feel like that it had an effect on the bands that you were and your scene. I feel like you guys didn't have that lighthearted kind of punk rock to nurture what you were doing. It was more like you have to fight for your place.
Yeah, but we had it in like your records, and we had it in like, looking up to gay advert from the adverts, and, uh, X-ray specs,
Yeah.
and like you mentioned X, and I mean, just so many great bands, and the Slits, which they just totally blew my mind, and the Raincoats. So much stuff coming out from England has always impressed me so much more. I mean, not to be weird, but I have this weird line over my face, but it looks kind of cool, kind of like a little handlebar mustache. I think it looks great. But I was just thinking of how, we had it, but it was like, this already happened and we're listening to it.
Yeah.
But the great thing about music is when you're in your 20s or your teens and you're listening to music, it feels like it's for you right now. Like it's hard to be like, when I listened to go-go songs, I didn't feel like I was listening to oldies. They were like right now. And obviously I was like 14 and 15 when like Vacation came out, and like, I guess a little younger when the first one came out. But, then when I was in my 20s and stuff, and being like, what do I really like? And it kept coming back to the Go-Go's. And yet I was playing this kind of music that wasn't as reflective of what I actually gave me joy to listen to. So you guys were always kind of a touchstone of like, how can I make this fun? I want this to be fun. Because for me as a female viewer, and I told you this when we met, like, just you guys it is so amazing, if y'all haven't read the book, to read the story of how the video that catapulted you to like international fame was kind of like this throwaway thing, and you didn't even want to show up. It's a great story because it's like one of those things where you don't feel like doing it, and then you do it, and it ends up being a huge, like, life-changing, game-changing thing, even though you had no clue it was gonna be. But as me watching it, seeing you guys like just be goofy and goofing around and splashing in the water, and it's for We Got the Beat, and
no, Lips Are Sealed.
Oh, Lips Are Sealed. Our Lips Are Sealed. Sorry, my mistake. But watching you guys goof around and just be funny was kind of a really big part of it. Like, I wasn't looking for someone to preach to me or tell me who to be. I just was a person who liked good music, and it was good music to me. And to see women who are making it and who were like able to have fun, like, and who in a way like kept like forcing it to be, I was like, how are they having so much fun? And I know there's always this weird thing on women in bands to be friends. Like, so are you guys all friends?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, people never ask Wilco if they're fucking friends. You know what I mean? And it's like, are you guys friends? Are you fighting? Are you arguing? And like all this kind of stuff. And at least the public sort of sense of you was like, you were a good time, fun.
We were
a good time.
And that wasn't fake. I mean, we one of the things I loved about writing the book was, and when I started the book, I wasn't even in the band. I'd gone through a really ugly divorce, which all is well in the world now. But I think it's kind of amazing that I'm out of the band and I'm writing this book, and people keep asking or insinuating that I had some kind of gag order, which I did not have anything like that. I could have written whatever I wanted, but the book I wanted to write was I wanted a really good book. I didn't want to be the Go-Go's historian. I didn't want to document the Go-Go's life and times. I wanted to tell my story, and I wanted to tell it in a really good literary compelling way, because I want to be a writer, and this was my shot to show people that I could do it. So, but as I'm writing about the Go-Go's, instead of feeling angry and bitter, it really helped me heal. It helped me heal that terrible hurt that I was kind of had come out of. It helped me come out of it because there was just so much joy, and it was so much greater than the negative stuff. And we have a documentary coming out, and one of the reasons we wanted it is because there was so much happiness and so much joy, and yet what gets sensationalized, it's kind of like your girlfriend or your any friend you have, like if you just kind of tell them about when you have fights with your mate, and they never, it's like that, because you don't go like, oh, we had the best time, really really over, it's like, that's not what you talk about. You say, oh, you talk about the bad stuff more. And So that seems to be like what everybody was holding up, and it's not the whole picture. So anyway, I guess my point is that so much fun. It wasn't fake. We were, for a long time, we were, it was like being on a honeymoon. It was like having just the best. And for me, people that read my book, they're going to know where I came from. They're going to know the pain of my adolescence. They're going to know what it felt like to be so ostracized and targeted, and so these hypocrites that, you know, just couldn't tolerate anybody that was different than them, and really went out of their way to be cruel to both me and my mom. And so to be accepted and to belong and to feel like I was part of something that was like a sisterhood, it filled a lot of longing in me.
I think one of the things about the book that is so amazing is that I got all the stuff I wanted as like a hardcore fan who couldn't remember the name of the video with the fountain in it. But I'm seriously going to go to like be sleeping tonight and be like, I can't believe I said the wrong video name to Kathy Valentine. Anyways, let it go. Woo!
Let it go. I mean, I'm gonna let it go, but I'm like a chronic corrector. I'm like one of those people.
I'm glad you did, because I was kind of in my head. I was like, was it? And then I was like, anyways, back to now. One of the really cool things that I loved about your book, as a kid who grew up in the 70s, was the 70s and your relationship with your mom and that experience. And I feel like with today's like hyper like hover parenting and all this kind of stuff, it's like there's a lot of bad stuff you can say about maybe how alone you were a lot as a kid or how permissive things were, but there's also positive things, because I also had a similar experience of being alone and having drugs and alcohol around, you know, starting at like 9, 10, 11. And there's clearly people can judge it and be like, oh, well, that's that and that's bad or whatever. But there's certain things about having stuff happen to you that gives you independence and gives you confidence. And I felt like that really came through in, I mean, even in the title of the book, it's like that you're driven and that you had this thing you really wanted, and that you had the idea that even though people would put you down, you were still going to go for what you wanted. You'd seen what you wanted in you. And how much of that do you think had to do with growing up in the 70s in your particular situation?
Well, I mean,
ambition.
Yeah. And I think what it was like, you know, I felt, I mean, my mom was working full time and putting herself through college, and it took her 12 years to get her degree because of just, she was having trouble with, I think, her language requirement. She finally ended up taking Portuguese, but we were living around UT campus for my whole young childhood. And we moved a lot. Every year I went to a different school and there was no kids around. There was no kids around where we lived. And she had a couple of friends that had kids that every now and then we would visit, but I was on my own a lot. I was a fantasy addict. I was an avid reader. And I just had, and what I felt like was it's my job to take care of myself. You know, when my mom's at work or at school or has her friends over, you know, it's my job. And I also got everyone that was hanging around was like these bohemian academics, and I got a lot of praise for them. So the shit didn't hit the fan for me until my mom, with all the best intentions, decided to move us into the suburbs, to this lower middle class, horrific place with all these people that were like, they were like nuclear families with and station wagons, and a mom that stayed home. Nobody was divorced. And that's when it was bad. And that's when I also saw the hypocrisy of people for the first time, because, you know, rock and roll was huge for me and the people that I knew. But I would like look at, and like, you can't even handle how different we are. And yet you love David Bowie, and you would kick his ass if he was in this school. And so rock and roll really saved. I was like, these people are hypocrites and they're assholes and they love the music, but I know how they are. And yet for me, it gave me this hope that there was a world out there that was so different than these circumstances. But my earliest memory is that I have to take care of myself. I have to take care of myself. And my mom was just like, you know, she was always worried about not having enough money. She was always just thinking about what she wanted to do next, and, you know, kind of just what was good for her. And it was my job to take care of me. And I think that's was a large part of and that's why I wanted to have that background in the book, because I don't think any reader was going to understand how profoundly important this band was to me unless they knew where I'd come from and how devastating it was to lose it. But yeah, I was very driven. I wanted to do something extraordinary because I didn't feel like I mattered. I wanted to prove I mattered. If it meant getting a straight A's in school, I mattered. If it meant being the first, you know, scientist to cure a disease, that, you know, I just wanted something extraordinary. And music was what gave me my path. So yeah,
Like,
so in the 70s, here's the thing about the 70s, because I forgot to address that part. The 70s, so decadent. I mean, it's hard to explain to someone, even that was a teenager or a kid in the 80s, how decadent it was and how okay it was. I mean, like, you know, it's right on the heels of the 60s. So it was all the free sex and free love without all the flowers and the kind of, it was just like down and dirty sex and drugs without being scary. I mean, the worst thing that would happen is you'd get gonorrhea. So there was a lot of sex, a lot of drugs. The drug dealers were characters that, you know, that the drugs were, you know, it was just like, it was a really different time. So I don't think when people think they read it, and there have been a lot of really judgmental people, but
are you serious? Like,
oh,
what
yeah.
about what?
About
like
my
about the drug stuff?
horrible things about my mom. And I'm just like, you know, I wrote about her with love, and I would not have had it any other way, because I came out of it, you know, I mean, I came out, you know, with a lot of messed up stuff too, but at the same time, there's a resilience and a strength and a drive and I don't know, a kind of a fearlessness that I don't think I would have had.
Yeah. I think that really I think your love for your mom totally came across in the book.
And I felt
I mean,
love. I know people that came from very different childhoods, you know, with the right kind of mom and the right kind of dad and the brother and the sister and the Labrador and all that. And they didn't feel loved. I know so many people that did not feel loved, that did not feel supported. I have people I've been in bands with that their parents said, you know, that you can't do that. You'll never succeed at that. My mom never said that to me. So
that's pretty amazing. I mean, I know people who are in therapy because their parents loved them too much. I was just like, I wish, but it actually, you know, the older you get, the more people you meet, and you see these people who you think have everything all together. And I just feel really happy for what I have and not comparing it to, you know, the stuff I didn't have. And I found your book to be very, very generous to your family members and to your bandmates as well. And as someone who's been in a couple bands, not as big as the Go-Go's, the band dynamic stuff was so right on and hit so many different notes with me to be musical on this. Just the thing of, like, you know, people having serious illnesses and it not really being talked about, like the lack of communication, you know, and like going through an abortion by yourself, and your band's back at the hotel, or you know, and like I definitely had things in our band, we had things like that, where I think when you're in a band, you end up spending so much time together, and the amount of pressure on you all for doing tons of press and all these events, and like waking up and doing like the radio stuff, and then going to sound check, and then having to do more interviews and all that kind of stuff. Like, I didn't have to deal with that so much in my younger career, but it was still like you spend a lot of time together and you grow apart as you're growing closer. Do you know what I mean? Like, where it's like, as you're kind of, you can be getting a lot closer, like kind of as a wolf pack that's traveling around, like you become these you know, like circus people or wolves or whatever who are like traveling around and protecting each other. But then there's this very aloneness about it too. Like you get home and it's over and it's, or you have a few weeks and you don't want to see them.
Yeah.
So you're at once like very, very close with these people. And then you're also, as you start getting more attention and playing together more, getting more gigs, you can actually get further away from them as you're spending more time with them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a really interesting dynamic. And I think, I mean, I haven't done a lot of movies. I did one movie, but I think a similar thing happens, but they move on a lot quicker. Like you get this intense experience where you're going through something together, and a band, it goes on for years and years. And, you know, I write in the book about like when we first took a break, and the break kept getting longer because Charlotte got carpal tunnel syndrome. And then, you know, and I was just freaking lost. I mean, it was like for 2.5 years, all I'd done is either been in the rehearsal room, on the road, in the studio, doing promo, and not, and by that time I was like, I was obliterated. All I was a go-go. That's all I was. It was like I wanted so badly to be away from the pain that I had come from. And it even eclipsed me. You know, I had a lot of years of being a musician and being in a band before the Go-Go's, but it was so big and it was so encompassing that I just kind of let it take over my being. And the first time we had some time off, I mean, I was losing it. And I think I wrote like, you know, I was just like, I just was looking for distractions all the time. But I love your analogy. It is like a circus troupe of wolves. It's like a wolf pack. And it felt like the most exclusive. I don't know if anyone can understand what it feels like to be in an all female band. There's something, and I've been in bands with guys too, and there's a little bit of that, but it's not the same. It's not the same. And, you know, I don't know why more girls don't do it. It's one of my big mysteries of life. Like we really thought there would be so many more bands, and I don't really understand. I do see the differences. I see kick-ass musicians, like really great female musicians and artists and singers and songwriters, but I don't see that many wanting to start bands compared to how many guys start bands. And it's such a cool thing. I mean, every year, like thousands and thousands of girls go through that weird trip of like trying to get in a sorority. You know, it's like they have the longing, you know, they have the longing to bond with their sisters. And it's like so much cooler to be in a band. It's like, Jesus, I don't, you know, and like
so the college speaking tour that's only going to be for sorority girls definitely needs to be on the list for after the COVID, where you're just like, facts of life, no. Go-Go's, yes.
I feel like I should just like start this thing where like go to all the campuses and start like a rock and roll sorority where they have that option, you know, because I know the longing to connect with women is there, but they're not starting bands very often. And then the ones I see that are, they're so cool. It's such a good thing. It's such a special thing. And you know what it's like. But
I think you and I have something also really special in common. Besides that, we're both kind of Kathys.
Yes.
I do think we look kind of alike. You can't really tell because we have very different lighting right now, but we met in person and I was like, you could totally be my sister.
I know. I was going to try to do,
because my eyes are more your color.
I was going to,
anyway, nobody wants to hear us talk about this.
Like that, you know, and like you'd be like, oh my God, she's a freaky stalker. So yeah, it's cool.
Oh, no. If you want one.
Oh,
I have extra. It's from Rite Aid. Yeah, I just put it in there to make it higher.
I like it. So
yeah, I can get you one because we can be matching. But I did want to say what's really one of the things we have in common is that, like, you know, we were both in bands that supposedly like had our heyday, and we're still performing with those bands or will be.
You guys are bigger than the Go-Go's now. I saw your tour dates. You're doing like Red Rocks and stuff. Those are the
but we never played stadiums. You played stadium, and I'm not saying this is like a competition.
No, of course. No, y'all are huge, and I love it. I love that you guys get to go out and do it again. It's such a, like, when I got sober and got to be a go-go again, I mean, there's been so many different phases. So many people just think, oh, it's a reunion. But, you know, the truth is the Go-Go's have worked together on and off since basically 1995. And we've done so many cool things. And each phase of it has been, for me, very different. And there was a phase where I wasn't into it for different reasons. There was phases where I always loved the performing. I mean, I'm a musician. I love performing. I love the fans. I've always been into that. But it's just like each phase is so different, and it's really, really cool. So I'm glad that you guys get to do that. I'm so glad you get to go out, and hopefully I saw that you are going to reschedule your tour.
Yeah, we're hoping.
So awesome that you get to go play bigger places. You get to have that. You don't have that same context that you were just up against so much negativity, you know.
Well,
and
when you were talking about earlier about, like, you know, how different punk was. I mean, you know, there was like Castration Squad and, you know, out the Bags and Alice Bag. Alice is still putting out great records. She just put out a great record called Sister Dynamite. And
yeah,
what I think is pretty amazing about now, besides a lot of great young bands that I'm really into and really excited to see on tour when that eventually happens, is that we can be over 40 and like go out on tour. And like for us, it's like, you know, we're playing bigger shows than we ever did when we were actually like in the 90s when we first started.
Yeah.
And that what kind of pisses me off is the combination of sexism and ageism, where it's like, okay, you had your 5 minutes and now go the fuck away and die.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it's a really amazing time where people are like rediscovering your music, my music, like Sinead O'Connor's music, like people who missed different phases of music are like rediscovering it, and then we're actually coming to them live and actually playing and still doing work. And you made a whole soundtrack that went with your book even.
Yeah,
I mean, amazing.
Yeah,
it's a great.
Thank you.
It's a great.
I love doing that, and I love putting out that message that, you know, I mean, I feel like I made the most interesting creative music I've made in my career, and I'm 61, so that doesn't change. You know, you do that, but it's absolutely true. At the same time, I have to acknowledge that there's some like disgusting level. Now I know I should preface this that I know that the internet and the comments as a whole, it's got to be like a set of people that doesn't, I hope it doesn't reflect humanity at large. But I mean, anytime, like I just had a review of my book in the Washington Post, and I went against my my rule, and I looked at the comments, and the comments were nothing to do with my book. The comments were like how the Go-Go's sucked, how the Bengals were better, how somebody was hotter, but Belinda was hotter. No, I mean, and I'm like, wow, the Washington Post does a review of my book, and this is what it evolves into in the comments. I see, and it's always men. It's always men. And I see in these forums, and like, oh, you don't deserve your success. You know, you suck. You don't deserve your, and I'm just thinking, like, why is this still happening? Why is a woman's hotness such a topic of, you know, I just don't see that. I don't see people doing that for men in bands. I don't see anybody doing that, you know.
Well, I'm like actually going on all the mail band things, and I'd be like,
we should
be a man. I think Damon is way hotter, and he's the bass player. Hotness meter 8.
Bono is so much better than Simon. Bono LeBon. Oh, that's a good.
Go to my questions.
Somebody should be Bono LeBon. Should be their like hotel name.
Oh, Bono LeBon.
Yeah, it's a good name.
Fugazi Ozzy Osbourne.
Hotel name. What is your, like, from your last tour?
I'm not telling you my hotel name.
Didn't you change it every single time? That's the fun part of being on tour. The most fun.
I can't remember. We were all characters from the Rockford Files last time, so
It's so random.
have you watched Rockford? Prototype, like, feminist male, not doing a very good job of it. And Isaac Hayes was a frequent guest star.
Oh, cool. Well, you would like this one. We did a tour where we all had serial killers names, and there was like Jane Wayne Gacy, and Gina was Polly Pol Pot. It was either serial killers or despots or it was so bad. Anyway, I guess that was a bad train to go down. Next question.
Next question. So, who do you think is the hottest go-go? I'm just fucking with you.
Oh God. Well,
Did you feel that pressure though? Did you feel like people are comparing us on stage, or were you just like, it's not my problem?
Well, we weren't real sexualized, which I liked. I think that's why we got pegged as the girl next door, because we were like in our thrift store clothes and, raccoon tails and ruffles and crinolines or what. I mean, it was like whatever we put together. It wasn't very sexual. So since we weren't real sexual in our attire, that meant we weren't the slut and we weren't the whore. So we must be the girl next door. We weren't. So I never really thought about, I mean, I wrote it in my book. What I mainly worried about was my hair, and that it was standing up enough and red enough. That was my big concern. I thought everybody was really pretty. I mean, I did think that. I thought everybody was pretty, but I never thought about hotness. I didn't think about that till the 90s. The 90s is when I started, because everybody was really hot in the 90s. Everybody was kind of, I mean, this band, if you look at the 90s Go-Go's, everybody is just drop dead, like peak, stuff. And that's women in their, in late 30s and 40s, which is awesome. That's how it should be. Who wants to peak in their 20s? I sure don't. So no, I didn't think.
You hate yourself the most and think you're totally disgusting and like you're trying to like hide all your problems in the bottom of a bottle.
We had the best time, like just thinking about like, we used to constantly, we had a whole tour where all the backstage passes were matrons gone wild with us on little rascal scooters. And,
I just think the girl next door thing is so funny to me because you guys are such hard partiers. And like, to me, that's a revelation that I think a lot of people will be very surprised about. I wasn't, but
not only but really, like really wicked humor. Like, I mean,
yeah, that's what I mean is that like, you guys could be total jerks. I say that with absolute love, that you could be mischief making, wasted, like shaving cream in the pool or whatever people do. Because I've never done anything like that.
I was definitely a prankster, a big prankster. I still am. My daughter gets annoyed with me, but so definitely pranksters and just anything for a laugh. Now I felt like my job, once I'd made it, my job was to keep it. That was my number one driving. And as it got more splintered and more, some of the people in the band, it was their first band, and I think they just, didn't cherish it the same way, right. But for Gina and me, we'd moved to LA to make it. We'd left our families. We were determined to make it, and we made it. And Gina and I were very like-minded. We were like, 1 in a million gets to this point. And I, for my part, got very desperate and fearful to keep this, because it was my identity. It was how I could feel safe, secure, take care of my mom. By that time, I'm the caregiver and the caretaker, and she's not an invalid. That's just the way it is. And I'm, taking care of myself, paying my bills. So I was pretty desperate to keep it. And my way, like as soon as I saw somebody, like, if I got on the bus and Belinda was like this, my job, I felt like, was to make her laugh, make her have fun. to make you have fun. And I was very successful at it, but it would always be like a Band-Aid, you know, there was things happening, but it was also exhausting. So yeah, we had incredible senses of humor. I think nobody still to this day, nobody makes me laugh um, more than being with the other go-go's. And we had things like, you know, we'd have these contests like, you know, how could you make people, you tried to make everybody sick, like retching sick by what you could think of, like the most disgusting thing you could think of. And you'd just be going, ugh, ugh. And it was like, and of course we'd be dying laughing the whole time because the things that we could come up with, like we had hardcore roadies that were just like, you know, couldn't be around us. They were so horrified.
I love imagining Jane in her tiny little voice being like, what if I barfed up a salad and then I ate it and then I pooped it out and then my dog ate the poop?
Oh, that's so mild. That is so mild.
I know. Well, you know, this is, I don't know how G-rated.
Yeah, I don't either, but you need to come with us and next time you'll come with us and we'll whip you right in.
I'll follow you on tour. I can't find one of my favorite sentences in the book that totally related to what you were just talking about. It was this thing basically about how like fun was your saving grace, but it was also the thing that was kind of pulling you down. Like this
it was like
need to be a fun girl. It's like it's like, you know, when you're reading a book and you come across like the perfect sentence and you're like, that's the perfect sentence. And I highlighted it and I folded the page and I was totally prepared. And now, but if you can think of anything to say on that while I'm looking.
Well, it's just like, I mean,
is that what made you feel valuable? Like you were like a team player, like that was your spot in the team, and like
I just wanted it to be fun. I felt very responsible. And that's a holdover from my childhood. I felt very responsible as a kid, responsible for making sure my mom was okay. And the way she was okay was for me to be okay. Responsible for, you know, the house being presentable. She didn't have time for that. I just felt very responsible. So I took it on in the band and I felt it was my job to just keep making sure, also for myself. I mean, I'm a self-preservationist above all. And I just sensed, as long as it's fun, as long as everybody's laughing and having a good time, not only did it keep the bad stuff, like maybe that wasn't real, but it kept maybe the band would stick around longer. So it was a burden, but at the same time, like anything, I was kind of naturally funny anyway. So it wasn't like I was like, you know what I mean? It wasn't like
it wasn't like a put on, or you're like, oh, drudgery, this is this thing I have to do. It's like a thing that you grew up with, this kind of skill that you utilized in your band for good or for bad.
And I think that's just survival mechanisms. You see what works. What do you have that works for you? Okay, I'm in a situation where I'm going to turn that fucking knob up to 11. You know, and you just take all the things that you have working for you that help you to survive, and you turn it up. You turn it up. You turn it up. And, you know, if one of the things is drinking, you turn that up. It's like everything was turned up to the max with me. But anyway.
Well, I'm glad you've really calmed down.
Yeah, I laugh a whole lot.
You do. I mean, I don't know you that well, but
we have so many questions. I can't read unless I put on my glasses. Okay. Sorry for the glare. We should probably do. Everyone's liking our interview. Do you see the questions, Kathleen?
Yeah. This is such a great discussion. Oh, you said I'm a great interviewer. I felt like I was talking too much. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Look to the left of where it says people, and there's ask a question. How long did All I Wanted take to complete start to finish? It took 3 years. I did enjoy it. Actually, I enjoyed it when I did it well. I enjoy anything when I do it well, but there's a lot of times I wanted to give up. A lot of times I just thought, nah, I can't do this. I really struggled with procrastination. I really struggled with perfectionism. I wrote the same 3 chapters for 8 months over and over. And luckily I was almost scared, like, I'm going to have 3 perfect chapters and everything else. Nothing's going to match up. But I got so that I could massage and shape everything into the place I wanted it to be. But it took 3 years, I think, but I did take 8 months off to have a relationship with my dad before he died. Somebody wants to know music. Are they asking me? Why don't we both answer this? What music are you listening to, Kathleen?
I'm sorry, I'm not seeing the question. Oh, wait, ask a question. Okay, I got it. Okay, wait, what were you saying, Kathy? I'm sorry.
Wait, Kathy, I learned how to play the bass using your bass lines. Who supported your music? The question disappeared. I didn't hear the rest of the question. It just disappeared. Oh, wait. Oh, my mom supported my musical passions. The guys that I looked up to, the musicians in Austin, the royalty supported me. Nobody was dismissive. I was really, really fortunate to be around great guys because I looked up to a lot of them, and I met so many, and I'm still friends with all of them. And so, yeah, I had a lot of support, and I'm glad you're playing the bass. And what bass players did you look up to? I didn't look up to any bass players. I played guitar.
Because you're a guitar player, yeah.
I didn't even pay attention to the bass until I became a bass player. I didn't pay attention to it, and now I recognize what a awesome role and instrument it is. But I think of myself as a musician more than a guitar player. Or I mean, I'm just as good at. I can like make amazing beats and stuff now. So I just think of myself as a musician. So, why did you borrow a bass? Because I didn't have one. And from John Shambodi, I borrowed his bass. I wrote about this in the book because he said it was a good bass. And he was the bass player that had played on Elvis Costello's My Aim Is True. And it was the bass that played on Allison and on Watching the Detectives. So I thought, yeah, I'll take that bass. And I call that chapter Good Mojo because I thought it was good mojo to put that bass on Beauty and the Beat.
That's awesome.
Do you have a heart out? Because I could keep going for a little while if you can.
Oh, no, I don't have a heart out.
Neither. Oh, hang out with us. High school reunions. I dropped out of high school in 3 months after 9th grade. I dropped out of high school. I went to a hippie commune. It was awesome. My daughter was asking about it the other day. Tell me more about your school, Mom. And it was.
How's she about you doing all this stuff? And like, I mean, is she just like totally freaked out by it, or?
No.
When she was little, was she freaked out by it? Like, was she just like, I don't want to share my mom with all these people, or?
No. She in fact, we had this great thing last night. I think we stayed up really, really late just talking, like go figure. And she had this thing. She said, I'm going to ask you questions for 15 minutes and then you ask me questions. And it really launched some of our best conversations we'd had. And so I asked her what it felt like, because she used to come on tour with the Go-Go's in the early 2000s, and she would be like 5, 6, 7, 8, so on, and we'd let her come on stage and dance. And I was saying, do you remember that? What did it feel like? Because you were always holding back. I could tell she was holding back. And she said, because I didn't want to seem like the wacky little kid. You guys were all like the adults, and I wanted y'all to think I was cool. So I didn't want to go up on stage and act like some cute little kid. So I would just try to be cool up there. And I'm like, no, we wanted you to go nuts and be a wacky kid. Anyway, what really was cool was when I played my first shows with the band in 2018, since not being in the band, and it was the Hollywood Bowl, and Audrey was 16 and she was there, and I came off stage and she was just like tears were going. It was like seeing all those people. It was the first time she really got it. And plus, her friends, their moms, a lot of them are like, oh my God, they were fans, or some of her teachers, like every now and then will say, is your mom going on tour? So I have more of an idea now of like what culturally that we had an impact. Somebody says, in your book, you discussed being insecure about your songwriting. And my two favorite go-go songs are Beneath the Blue Sky and
About you.
that you co-wrote. That feeling of insecurity. Of course, Jesus, I'm 61. It would be so sad if I hadn't. But I tell you, I was very insecure. And the reason, it was a very logical reason. It's because when I joined the band, Jane and Charlotte had written an amazing collection of songs. I mean, most songwriters, I call it, they hit a vein. They hit a vein and they just knock out. And it doesn't mean that you'll never write a great song again, but every songwriter has, or especially partners, Lennon and McCartney had it too. And when you think of the songs that Keith and Mick wrote, there's like certain eras where it's just killer. So Jane and Charlotte had, Lust to Love and How Much More, and these like songs. So I was insecure. I was insecure about Can't Stop the World because we hadn't been playing it for 2 years and we'd never played it live, and we just kind of whipped it up in the studio. So I was worried that didn't hold up. Vacation, I was terrified that it was going to be compared to Our Lips Are Sealed, and we got the beat. And I actually gave away much more of the song than business-wise was smart, because I just wanted them to be a part of it. I really felt insecure. It's a really good question, because I'm going to tell you that as I became older and a better musician, I got a lot more confident, just like we all do, in ourselves and our abilities and our talents. But making an album by myself for the first time was when I really got my confidence. And it was 2005. I was making an album, not because I want to be a star or a solo artist. I never really wanted that, but I was pregnant and I wanted to keep doing music because I'm a musician. And for the first time in my life, I don't have anyone saying, oh no, we don't like that idea. Or, oh no, that song doesn't sound like us. Or, no, I think it should go like that. Like, nobody was doing that. And a band, and I don't resent that. That's what a band is. A band is people saying no,
excuse me,
no, yes, we all like this, and that's what filters through. So it's not like I resent the process of a band. Obviously not. I've been doing it for decades, but it was so liberating to be able to try anything I wanted, do anything I wanted, do it the way I wanted. And at the end of it, I was like, wow, I'm really good, and it was a great feeling. It was a really good feeling to just to know that I have really good ideas, really solid musical ideas, and that I can sing, I can write, I can produce, I can play. I have great hooks, and it did tons for my confidence. And for any musician that's feeling that, I'm sure there's some musicians. We have like 450 people. If you're in a band and you just know it's part of the process. That's part of what being in a band is having people shoot your stuff down, but don't take it to heart. I was told by a producer I looked up to in '87 that I didn't have what it took to sing. And I carried that. With me for a really long time. And it's like, don't let anybody tell you. And if you're in a band and somebody doesn't like your idea, don't think it doesn't mean you have good ideas. It just means that, you have to kind of maybe go do something on your own and show yourself what you're capable of doing.
Yeah, or maybe it's not for that band. And that's the other thing is, like, side projects in bands or doing your own thing during an event doesn't mean you don't want to still be in your band. Like,
yes.
I think it's a really healthy thing. And I mean, I don't know how to use GarageBand because I learned to do music in the computer right when Pro Tools was coming out. So I'm still like a loser who uses Pro Tools. But like, GarageBand is like the consumer one that like most people have, and just encouraging other women to like just try GarageBand and try to make anything in it. And I've had friends who only did cover songs who started writing their own music just because they realized, oh, I have access to this tool and I can record myself, and it helped them get more comfortable with the sound of their own voice, with what their instrument was doing. It gave them more confidence when they were in the studio with not working the board or being the engineer themselves of what they wanted to hear. Because even if it's in, you know, a program like GarageBand or, you know, in the computer, you start to be like, I love trebly guitars that are panned a little right. Or
Yeah.
I love, you know, I want the bass to take up the whole field. Or I want, you know, you start to realize that when you get the time to work on your own. It's like Virginia Woolf, a room of your own. You need some kind of recording, any kind of recording device, a 4-track cassette player, like was my big thing. I spent the first $400 that I saved up from Bikini Kill. I bought a 4-track Tascam and I wore that thing out. I did like Randy Travis covers on it. I was like so excited to be able to try whatever I want and not have, and not like my band was like, you know, incredibly mean and like hated all my ideas, although some of my ideas were pretty terrible. I did, it did give me more confidence than actually playing live had up to that point or any of that.
And it's so much better and more meaningful when you believe it yourself. Like, it's one thing if somebody gives it to you, but when you discover it for yourself, and I've been seeing this with my daughter, she started playing guitar a year ago and teaching herself and learning on YouTube and learning songs she liked. And she's just now, a year later, I'm blown away with how far she's come. And it's, you know, she'll come in and every now and then she'll say to me, you know, how do you think this sounds? Do you think does this strumming sound better like this or like this? Or do you think this is a good key? Should I find another key? And do you hear any off pitch things? But for the most part, in a year, like seeing this happen and for her doing it for herself and of her own volition. And she's now not afraid to post things on social media of her singing. And I'm just so proud. And it's just like what you're saying, even if you don't want to go into GarageBand, there's things on your phone you can do, or you can just start playing an instrument and just singing songs that you like and teach yourself the chords. And it's just such a fun, I mean, I can't even imagine not having that in my life. And I know not everybody wants to do that, but man, if you have any pull to do that or anything, any kind of pull, the one thing I've learned in life is that it's when you feel that pull, it's magical, and follow it. It's a thread. It's pulling you for a reason. And, you know, don't ignore it. It's hard to ignore it. If it's real, it's always in the back of your mind.
It's almost like the crush that spawned Vacation. It's like, I mean, when Bikini Kill started playing together again, we only just did one song, and then I came home. It was for a Raincoats book release party, and I was like, I think I want to play with them again, like, because sort of the bad stuff from our history. Did you watch Downton Abbey?
No.
This big like Downton Abbey band moment. There's these two sisters in this show, Downton Abbey, right? And one of them is like the one who gets all the attention and like whatever, and then the other one's the one who's like more like she's into like literature and like all this stuff, but she doesn't get as much attention. And Mary, who's the kind of like pretty mean one or whatever, she treats the other girl like total crap and like ruins her wedding and does all this shit to her. It is so mean, which is kind of like stuff that happens in a band where things just like start piling up, and you there's never the right time on tour to communicate about somebody said something that really fucking hurt your feelings.
Oh yeah.
Like, and then you're like shoving notes under each other's door. It's like, yeah, what do you do? How do you deal with this? But in this show, Downton Abbey, the one sister says to the other sister, I've been so mean to you, and yet you showed up for my wedding. Why? And she said, like, it's like scales. She's like, all the mean shit you did to me, and then our shared history, well, I guess I should go like this. Our shared history just became a lot heavier and more important than the negative part of our history and how mean you've been to me. The fact that I need you because you've seen the things I've seen and you've been the places that I've been means more than all those mean things that you did. I mean, I guess that's just some like older lady forgiveness shit that I'm on right now, but
no, true. And it's like,
but wait, I gotta ask you, I don't want you to go before I ask you. My friend Molly Newman, amazing musician from you know Molly from Bradmobile and
I
the
don't know
PTs and
in person, but we're Twitter friends. I was happy to have like a lot of you, the next generation of musicians that came after the Go-Go's, I wasn't sure whether you guys even liked us, like I was surprised in the 90s, like you would think like, oh, they were just this band with hits, we were like, it just didn't occur to me that that we had that good influence, and yet it's my favorite part of our legacy is how many people kind of started bands.
Millions of
But
people picked up instruments because of you.
Something about what you were just saying, because the Go-Go's, we're 61. I think somebody else is 61. We are in our 60s, and we are still healing and forgiving each other for stuff that happened a long time ago. And people are different. Everybody has different ways. Some, like I'm very much not a grudge holder, and it's not because I'm a saint. It's because it's better for me to let go and move on. That feels better. I'm very much about what's best for me. What's best for me is to forgive, move on, let go. Other people almost kind of, and I'm not saying any names or saying, I'm just saying in general, somebody else might thrive on that a little bit. Somebody else might, they don't want to let go of it. And it's like, we still find out about things from the past, that, and, I think in January when the documentary premiered, we had some really good talks and kind of really we all hugged each other after the premiere, and we kind of talked and said, nobody should be held accountable for things that they said or did when they were 23 years old and messed up and exhausted and stuff flying at you. You just shouldn't have to be accountable for everything, every mistake, when you're not an empathetic, grown up, mature, evolved person, you shouldn't pay for that. And I think we really came to a lot of understanding and healing. So that can go on, it's like a family, really like a family.
Yeah. Like a dysfunctional, fucked up family. Or healed. Healing and dysfunctional at the same time is possible. Molly's big question to me was, given all of the difficulties that you all had legally and stuff like that we learn about in the book, do you, in retrospect, look back and wish you would have just split everything 5 ways and called it a day?
Oh, absolutely. The way I think it should be, this is just my opinion, and there's no right or wrong. There's no manual. Songwriters have every right to want to keep all of their publishing. They have every right. So I don't think that there's any right way or wrong way. Just like any big topic, abortion. I don't think everybody should have to have one, and I don't think, it's like there's just like whatever. Everybody does what's right for them. But
right.
But I what I do in bands that I'm in, no matter who wrote the song, financially we split it equally. Now, I haven't been in a band as big as the Go-Go's, but we've had some licenses and stuff, and the songwriter's name stays on the song. So nobody gets credit for something they didn't do. Nobody gets like credit for it. But as long as you're in the band, playing the gigs, doing the work to help sell the song, the money is split equally. This is what I do in every band that isn't the Go-Go's. And but if you leave the band, that doesn't continue. So it's like you have to continue being in the band, you have to continue doing the work, and you participate equally. If I wrote, rock and roll matron, and it gets licensed by Depends, and I get 50 grand. Y'all like that one, huh? My band, we split it. We split the 50 grand equally, but my name is on Rock and Roll Matron forever. And if the drummer leaves and some other drummer comes in, the drummer doesn't get 10% of Rock and Roll Matron. So that's the way I think. I think that's a really cool, fair way to do it. That way the writers get their credit. They're not having to have someone's name on that wasn't even breathing the air in the room when the song was. And that way everyone that is doing the work is feeling appreciated and recognized for their contribution in making that song a hit. So I was very stuck in the middle because I really knew remember my job, I called myself the diplomat. My job was to make sure everybody was happy so the band didn't explode. So my job is to make sure the songwriters are happy. I'm a writer. I don't care which way it goes, but the main writers, they got to be happy. The people that aren't writing as much, they got to be happy. So I'm just like, okay, we got to figure this out. And it would have been a lot easier. It would have taken, it would have taken a lot of the problems out,
Yeah, no, I just thought it was interesting because so many musicians are probably listening, and we all
Yeah.
come across the same thing.
I think
like
it's really smart. I think it's a really smart method that I've come up with. That way, if two people write a song, it always has their name on it. But the band that's making it happen gets as much money as everybody. I'm pretty loose about that. I mean, I can sit in a room with somebody and to write a song, and I could be doing everything, and every line they suggest, I'm like, no, I don't like that. And then, basically write the whole song myself. But we sat down together. I wouldn't have done it without, and it's our song.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm pretty loose about that stuff. I just think there's enough songs, there's enough things, there's enough to go. I don't come from a scarcity model of looking at the world, because I grew up so poor, and yet there was always enough. There was always enough. I always had food, even though, I don't know, it was always okay. So I just never think in terms of not enough.
Yeah. Should we take a couple more questions from the people watching, and then call it a day?
Yeah.
And let me see if I can.
I don't do tour questions because that information is on Google. So anybody that wants tour questions.
Do you have a favorite hobby that would surprise people who don't know you personally?
I have a lot of hobbies. I like to make. I have a lot of hobbies. I like to make jewelry. I like to, although my eyesight's pretty bad and it's getting harder. I've done sketching. I'm really into computer stuff. I'm really into Pro Tools, making beats. Really into making beats. I'm catching up on. I keep telling people. People ask what I'm into musically. I'm catching up on decades of hip hop. And it's like when I discovered jazz in the 90s, when Kathleen's band was happening and all this stuff.
I was listening to jazz.
It was like jazz was my jam. And I was just like, my palms were sweating and my heart was racing. And it was the first music I'd gotten enthralled with since rock and roll. And I went through that phase with blues too, where I just was really digging deep into blues. I liked one of your questions, Kathleen. You said, was there other females besides Suzi Quatro that I thought were underserved or underknown about? And that's a cool question. And trying to think.
Should I ask it?
I think I just asked it.
I guess you just asked it. Yeah.
All right. There's a woman named Barbara Lynn who's amazing. She comes from Beaumont, Texas. Amazing guitar player. She wrote "As Tears Go By," and the Stones covered it in '64. She plays guitar, and she's just been doing it forever. Barbara Lynn's amazing. I obviously can't wait for Suzi Quatro to get her due. And if she doesn't, people always ask me about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I think it would be a travesty to have the Go-Go's go in before Suzi Quatro. I don't think any woman should be in there before Suzi Quatro.
So you're exactly 10 years older than me. Mm-hmm. And all the women who I've ever interviewed or hung out with and talked about this specific thing, it's always Suzi Quatro. Yeah. And then women who are more of like the Leslie Gore generation, it was Rosemary Clooney was one of the big names that I got.
But she's not a rock and roll.
Just as a singer who like influenced like a lot of different people. It's just amazing to me how generationally there's these people. I mean, Rosemary Clooney, obviously way more on the radar than just about anybody in the universe. One of the most famous people to ever live. But like, I think it's really interesting that Suzi had such an effect on so many people. And I think, did you mention Fanny in the book? You're like, but they weren't doing what I wanted to do.
No, I did mention Fanny. I didn't know about them. They were a kick-ass band. They were really cool.
I didn't know about them either. I mean, till
But
like the 90s.
they had a lot of weird drama too. Like I started diving into their history, and this stuff is all out there. There's this amazing YouTube channel called 60s female 60s garage bands, and oh man, so many cool bands. I would love to just tell all their stories, but I don't know if I have time in my life to do that.
No, everybody should go to that. I'm gonna go to that.
Blowing.
Wait,
How many bands, young women that are in bands now that you know who really influenced them? And when I found this out, my jaw dropped, and I was like, okay, I got to hand it to her. Is Avril Lavigne. Avril Lavigne was a female with a guitar fronting a band that was the first that so many young girls had seen. Even like Billie Eilish, a band I love from Toronto, the Beaches. I mean, it's like, okay. And on one hand, I'm like, how could I not realize that someone has come along that's having this effect? And on the other hand, I just think it's super cool that someone that didn't register on my radar is inspiring young girls to start bands. So you never know where it's going to come from.
Yeah. No, all the people who I know who are like 15 years younger than me are like, oh, Avril. And I'm like, what?
It makes me want to go like check her out, but then I'm like, I don't think I like that. But, whatever.
But it's also like, I think it's one of the really interesting things about the Go-Go's is that your band really appealed to independent people who were like very independent and punks and stuff like that, but then also had this like pop mainstream thing that just went absolutely bananas. And
yeah,
I don't think very many bands have occupied that same space. And I know when we first met, you were really shocked, like that like me and Toby and Kathy are so into you, and Molly and Aaron, and Allison for Brownville, our friends, and like Araya Robles, who made this amazing fanzine about the Go-Go's with like a full color fanzine with every article ever. I think I sent you her info, but it was like, and we were all passing this stuff around to try and figure out like the history of the Go-Go's, because it didn't exist. Like, you hadn't written this book yet, and we wanted to know as much as we could, and so we were all sharing information. And then we're like, oh, they had this this punk history was where it all started, was you guys being in the punk scene and you being in different bands before, and also you being in girl school is a mind blower. Total mind blower. I mean, Kelly, so many great tidbits in this book.
Kelly Johnson was like just a dream guitar player. So somebody asked if our bands would go on tour. That's not going to happen because Bikini Kill is huge now, and who like we're not going to do that. Sorry.
We're not. Well, I think it'd be like the same people would want to come. So we would have, from a business perspective, we should play like you should headline one night, and then we'll headline the other night. So if people have to travel, they can come and see both shows.
Yeah, and we do try to like we talk.
We open for you. We open for you, which I don't even know you remember, at the Warfield.
I remember that, and I have the poster. Right here. It was such a cool poster.
We actually got shit because it was like a $20 show. Well, we'll find out soon with the poster.
Look at this, everybody.
How much did that show cost? Was it only $12? It was $20, right?
Yeah.
Show. Cute poster.
7:00.
Does it say?
No. Awesome.
People were pissed at us because we always played $5 shows, and they were like, how can you play a $20 show? And I was like, because it's the fucking Go-Go's, moron. Of course we're going to play with. This was like the biggest dream come true in our lives. And we're like, oh yeah, we're not going to play. Like, I was just like, that was one of the moments where I was like, really questioned some of the like more rule making orthodoxy of the independent music scene, where it was like, okay, well, you think what's punk is only playing $5 shows, but what about people who have to earn a living because they don't have trust fund families who are supporting their music, and so they have to charge a reasonable rate so they can keep being musicians? Or also, what about the fact that to us, the Go-Go's are true punk and true soul music that like has changed our lives, and like that we wouldn't ever, 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 we could never think of you as like sellouts for a $20 show. That's ridiculous. You invented the wheel for us. You know what I mean? Like,
but
so when we had guys saying stuff like, and it was all guys, you know, being like, you're sellouts because you're playing a $20 show. I was like, you don't understand like what the lexicon of our historical brains are. Like, this is, to even question it to us was like, I don't know. But it was one of those milestone moments where I was like, if somebody's questioning that, fuck that. I don't want to be in this kind of rulemaking, you know, you have to do this and you have to do that or you're a sellout kind of world. Because when it got down to it, I have to say, a lot of the people in the punk scene, which was post-hardcore, which is what made everything shitty, I think.
Not fun.
It's like, when it got down to it, I experienced just as much sexism in the underground kind of music scene from fanzine people as I did from regular journalists. And you know what I mean? And to me, that was devastating. And it's also devastating when you're like, oh, I finally found my girl group and my family, and that goes wrong. And you hitched everything, your whole wagon to it. Yeah. You know what I mean? And like, I think that's something we had in common, because when Bikini Kill broke up, I mean, I cried for just a year. I just cried every day. I was like, I don't know who I am. I'm the girl from Bikini Kill. If I'm not the girl from Bikini Kill,
who am I?
It was like getting divorced from 4 people.
Yeah. And
like at one time.
And that was why it was so good for me. I mean, it's like once I got to be a go-go again, I never let that happen. I always kept my own bands. I always kept my own, because it was so devastating to lose myself. Yeah. I think, you know, people have experienced that in their jobs, or, you know, sometimes I've seen women do it in the man that they get with. They just become like, you know, an appendage. And it's like such an awful way to feel. But one thing before we go, I wanted to touch back on, like you said, how so much inspired us, but I want just to acknowledge how the back and forth torch passing that can go when women are really supportive of each other. And like what you guys did in terms of like really kind of supporting other women. And we didn't have a lot of other people to support, you know, and now we are in a position, like every time we go on tour, I always, we spend a lot of time sending bands back and forth with each other, like, you know, because it has to be a band that will pay for, that won't, you know, need a lot of money, because we don't have a lot of money to pay them. But somebody just, if I'd heard about the Regrets, and they were one of the bands we were talking about taking on tour. You know, we got Girl in a Coma and this, and that. So there's that supporting each other is so important. But I just wanted to acknowledge, like, when with Bikini Kill, like you guys, it inspired me too, because there was just something, I was so oriented to being like the best musician I could be, and having, you know, having the best songs and this and that I'd kind of forgotten that there's a primal kind of urgency that is so necessary to bringing people in, bringing women in. And you guys brought so many women to rock and roll and to music and to careers by putting that out
by
there.
sucking in public.
No, by making it about having something to say, and saying we're going to be heard, and we have something to say, and we're going to be heard. And we didn't have that problem. We were heard, but we were heard from our music, but nobody really wanted to hear what we had to say. You know, we had plenty to say, but nobody wanted to hear or asked us about stuff. And we weren't political, really. We didn't start thinking about songs like that till the 90s, when we started writing like Throw Me a Curve, about, you know, being size 0 as opposed to having a normal shape, and things like that. But yeah, you guys really inspired me too. And I love the back and forth.
I can't even believe you know who we are.
Anyway, so is there any more questions? Should we wrap it up? We've given everybody an hour and a half.
Oh shit. Yeah, I should probably go eat something, because I just ate like tons of hot Takis dipped in blue cheese dressing and then didn't have dinner. Whew. Don't do it.
Let's see. I don't want to talk about the Broadway show, because it's over and it was fantastic and we loved it. Will there ever be a La Tigra reunion? La Tigra.
I wouldn't rule it out. I definitely wouldn't rule it out.
It's hard to rule anything out in this business.
No, I mean that band was, I was much, I think, healthier because I had like actual relationships outside of my band. And even though I could be a total bossy jerk in that band, and Joe and JD probably secretly hate me, it was so much fun and such joy working with them. And every time I get to see them, I'm just so happy. So I do hope we do something together in the future. I'd love to play live with them if that ever works out. But
that band got my attention a lot when y'all came out.
Here to the rump.
Somebody wants to know, does my relationship with my mom inform relationship with my daughter? Yes, very much so. And I'm very supportive of anything my daughter wants to do, just like my mom was with me. But I also give her the boundaries and the guidance that I didn't get. So that was that. And makes me sad to hear you say women aren't forming bands and making music together. There, you know, so many making original music together and with guys. I want to understand where's the disconnect. I guess I'm talking about, you know, in my hometown, there's bands too with women. I guess what I'm talking about is you have to stick with it. You really have to stick. You have to get a band together and stick with it for sometimes 10 years to make it. And what I'm talking about bands like I'm just gonna off the top of my head, and I'm just gonna list a bunch of bands. I'm gonna say Green Day. I'm gonna say U2. I'm gonna say the Foo Fighters. I'm gonna say Arcade Fire. Where am I grabbing these from? Vampire Weekend. Imagine Dragons. I don't even know why I know that name. I'm trying to be, you know, relevant and current. So I'm naming all these bands. What's the thing? They're all guys. Okay. So I'm not saying there's not girls starting bands in towns. I'm saying there needs to be tons of them to be enough to make it, to be in that place where they are, you know, having careers.
It shouldn't be remarkable to see that Beyonce has an all-female band on one of her tours. It shouldn't be like, whoa, wow. It should just be like, great band. But
and good, and it also, she does that, and the Pink Heart, and that's what I'm saying. There's tons of musicians, but I think just like for all those bands that I mentioned that have made it, for all those bands, there were hundreds of guys and bands that didn't make it, hundreds. So it's a numbers game. We don't have hundreds of female bands, so that one or two that can have commercial success. You know, Haim is great. Haim is doing really well. So that's an exception. That's good. But I just want to see more.
But it shouldn't be an exception, and it shouldn't be like if there's a festival that has a bunch of women on it, it's like, oh, it's Lilith Fair. What if it's just like these are the best musicians right now? You know what I mean? It's like that whole thing. Like, I've always been really proud to be a feminist, and like I've been fine like talking about feminism and stuff like that. But it is annoying that nobody ever asked you about like being a musician, because I've been doing this for 35 fucking years, and it's not like I haven't learned anything. I didn't know shit when I started, but I learned. You know what I mean? And it's really weird to only be asked about my politics, because I think I'm a decent songwriter. And I think that that's part of the thing, is that if you don't get the support, and I think a lot of women give up, and I don't blame them. There's so many times, like when you were talking about writing the book and how many times you wanted to give up, and it's like, even just being in a band is really hard for anybody, no matter what your circumstances are. But if you add on to that, like, the gender, the race, class, and gender dynamics that run throughout everything, it can be 10 times harder to be the only, person of color in a punk band in your town. It can be 10 times harder to be, the female singer, even if you're not singing about politics. It can be really hard to be the one dude who's political in the scene. And everyone's like, if you're in like a more hedonistic kind of scene and people are down on that, or maybe you're in a really political scene and people are really down that you're hedonistic and you want to be wild and you want to be like pussy galore. And and just like be a hedonist and be awesome. Because that's one of the things about the Go-Go's that I love is that like, I sang a lot of songs about like domestic violence and rape and a lot of different experiences that me and some of my friends and other people I've met have had. But also I sang love songs, and part of that is because you guys gave me permission. And I ended up getting put into a different stereotype that was like, all you can do is try to sit there and freak out and write a fucking feminist anthem. Yeah. And like at a certain point I was like, I want to write about my friendships. I want to write about this other stuff. I want to write about my fascination with space. I want to write about, you know what I mean? And it's like, I felt like the Go-Go's gave a lot of people permission to write about whatever they wanted to write about. And summer fun is a great topic.
Exactly.
And having fun in the summer, there's nothing wrong with that.
I was really proud that our songs that even if it was a love song, it was empowering and stuff. But yeah, absolutely. I think that I really think I forgot what I was going to say now. I forgot. It was right about what you were saying. Oh well, maybe we're getting hungry and tired. But
I know we should go.
I know we should, but
cinematic and moody.
Important. I feel like it was really. I think this is important. I need to ask everyone to buy the book because this is how.
Yeah.
We're supporting.
I was supposed to do that.
And here's my socially distanced book. Here's mine. See, my face mask. If you can buy one please buy one from Book Soup because is so amazing. I don't know how many times I've been hanging out in the store and walking down the hill when I lived on Clark or Sunset Plaza, driving down the hill and hanging out at Book Soup. And we just have to support this store and buy your books. Even if you've already read it, if you have a little extra cash, buy it and give it away. I've had amazing things happen and like really cool things happen because someone bought a book, one of my books, and gave it to someone. And so things that wouldn't have happened, and I don't know how to say any examples, but
did you read the audiobook yourself?
Yeah, I did. So trust me on that good things happen.
You should get that. I want to get that.
It's super cool. And I can't remember. I wish I could remember. You know what? I'll figure it out after we hang up. I'll go, that's what it was. That's what I was going to say.
And I'll go, I can't believe I fucking misnamed that video. Anyways, you're fucking awesome, Kathy.
You're awesome. And something.
Thank you for everything.
Thank you.
This whole time is so weird. And thank you for everybody who joined us. So much love to you and your friends and your family, whoever you're hunkering down with. We hope that you can hunker down with Kathy's book because it's a great read. And it's not just a great read if you love the Go-Go's, it's just a fucking great memoir by a person.
Thank you.
And I think that's something that really sets it apart from books where like I'm not that interested in every single detail of every single show, although the details I got in this made me like run around the house and scream and be like, you're not going to believe this. You're not going to believe.
Thank you.
I don't want to give anything away though. I don't want to give away who was dating who or like anything like that. But there was a lot of exciting tidbits if you're a nerd, if you're like a music nerd. But it's also just, Kathy, it's a really fucking great book to just read if you have absolutely no interest in music and you just want to be in someone else's life for a while and learn something, because there's a lot of stuff, themes that keep coming back in it over and over and over. And again, I don't want to give it away. But it made me reflect a lot on my own childhood and on forgiveness. And, wow. And I really appreciated that aspect of that, because I do hold a grudge.
Well, your generosity is mind blowing, and you've been so wonderful. When the Go-Go's documentary comes out, you guys, Kathleen is just like, she just nails it every time she's on screen and talks about us. It's just like the audience is just like going, yes, with everything she says. So you're so generous.
Like, who's that lady?
No. You're just. You're just really, you have a way of being just really generous and supportive, and it really means a lot to me. And we should probably invite Dan back. It's his party, right?
Yeah, Dan, come back.
Okay, I'm here. Hold on for just a second. I'm going to come up. All right. Thank you both so much for this. This is great. I also want to remind everybody too that after this live stream ends, it's going to go into the archive, so there will be a record of it. So that's also very exciting, so people can watch this again later. So tell your friends that this live stream will be available later for everyone to see. And thank you both so much. This is amazing, really.
Oh my God!
Thank you.
Fun. And sorry we couldn't get to all your questions, but I hope y'all liked hearing us chat. This was so much like when we hung out at your house, wasn't it? Where we just we were like,
I know, but we were like not at all thinking of anybody else except for just like. So I think we did a good job trying to be like mellow and professional.
Yeah, we're getting through. So everyone be safe. Kathleen, you're awesome. I love you to death. And
I love you too, Kathy.
What else you're gonna do? I just can't wait. And I can't wait to see what is in store for all of us. It's, new time.
Who knows?
Yeah. Woo. Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you both. We'll see you all soon.
Bye.
Stay safe, everyone.